Hi, it's Matt here. So this is our own electric cars. We've got a 2020 Hyundai Ioniq electric, that's what my partner drives, and then this is what I drive, a 2014 Tesla Model S. And both of these are now the same value in the used market. So in this video I'm just going to look at these cars and why I think they're the best £20,000 electric cars you can currently buy. So both of these cars are 5-door family size hatchbacks. Obviously a Tesla Model S is a big car, but interestingly now you can buy both of these on the used market for £20,000 now in the UK, and they also do exactly the same mileage. Even though this has got a 38 kilowatt hour battery, you can get about 200 miles out of that, or a little bit more. This has a much larger battery, 85 kilowatt hour, but of course these are powerful and they're also less efficient, but they are sort of a beast of a car really. But again, this does about 200 miles, maybe a little bit more in the summer with efficient driving, but typical day-to-day driving you get exactly the same range out of both of these. So the Ioniq here is a premium SE. So the top spec model, so you get leather interior and you get an awful lot of kit. You get about as much kit as you can get in the car. You've got heated and cooled seats, heated steering wheel, lots of safety aids, including rear cross protection, blind spot monitoring, adaptive cruise control, lane keep. This has really sort of got semi-autonomous driving when you're on a motorway or dual carriageway. Yeah, these are fully loaded. You also get memory positions because you get electric seats in this, and a manual stop-start button, so very conventional really. An awful lot of switches. Being a 38, it's got this bigger screen which is nice, quite a wide screen. Separate heating, air conditioning buttons down there, which is nice. These are all touch sensitive. Mood lighting as well. The thing that I like the most about the Ioniq is they're very efficient and they've got great regen. So you've got flappy pedals on the back of your steering wheel here where you can adjust the regen up and down, and you can also take it off completely, so you've got a coasting mode which is good for sort of motorway or faster driving. But regen and strong regen, one pedal driving, and efficiency is what this car is about. And probably from compared to all electric vehicles, the original 28 and 38 kilowatt hour Ioniq is probably the most efficient electric vehicle out there. So as I said, these have got a 38 kilowatt hour battery pack. This is something like 75-80%, showing 139 miles, but it hasn't been driven efficiently recently. So what you find with these is it's quite easy in the summer to get 6 miles per kilowatt hour on average. I've actually got 7.5 before, but with normal sort of driving, 5.5 to 6 miles is quite achievable in these. So that's considerably better than you'll get with any other electric vehicle. That is if you try to drive them efficiently, of course. So at 6 miles per kilowatt hour, you're going to get 220 miles out of one of these. But at 5.5 miles per kilowatt hour on average, you're going to get 209 miles. And winter driving, you're still going to get 4 miles per kilowatt hour out of these vehicles. And you're going to see a range of about 150 miles in the winter at worst. But if it's not too bad and you're not using the heating too much, you're going to see better than that anyway. You're going to get 4.5 miles per kilowatt hour in the winter on average. That's about what we sort of see from this. So even though these cars have a relatively small battery for a modern electric vehicle, you get better range out of these than many other cars with much bigger battery packs. Certainly all the Stellantis vehicles with 50 kilowatt hour packs, these still beat them by a long way. So obviously with electric vehicles, it's not all about the battery pack size, it's also about the efficiency of the vehicle, which dictates the range. And these Ioniqs are hard to beat. They're the most efficient cars, and also very reliable as well, and one of my favourite EVs. We've owned this one now for 4 or 5 months. Before that we had a 28 kilowatt hour model, and had that for, I don't know, three years at least, maybe longer, maybe nearly 4 years. I drove that initially, and then my partner's been driving it for the last 1.5 years as well, but we've now upgraded to this newer model. So the charge port is here on the back on this Ioniq, and we've got a Type 2 port here for AC charging, typically overnight at home, and then this is your CCS port for DC rapid charging. So on these 38 kilowatt hour models, the rapid charging is a bit slower than it was on the previous 28 kilowatt hour generation. On these it is a maximum of 44 kilowatt, which isn't great, and it is slow in modern EV terms. So this will charge from 0 to 80% in 47 minutes. You're never going to be charging from 0, so typically you're looking about a 40-minute charge. However, we will never DC rapid charge this car because we're charging overnight at home on cheap rate, nighttime electricity as well, and that's more than we would ever need. The range of this car typically lasts us probably 3 days or so. We're only charging every second or third night anyway. And we had previously the 28 kilowatt hour, and that was charged every night, but again we never rapid charged because the range of the vehicle was more than our typical daily requirement. If you can't charge at home and you're reliant on public charging, then yes, you're going to want fast rapid charging, and you probably want a bigger battery EV so you're not charging too often. But if you can charge at home, then these, for your average driver, has got plenty range, and that DC rapid charging is less important because you're only going to do that when you're doing that occasional long trip beyond the range of the vehicle anyway. So I like the Ioniqs, huge amount of kit, very nice to have heated and cooled seats, and very nice to have a heated steering wheel in the winter. Also a long warranty on these. You get 5-year warranty on the vehicle and an 8-year warranty on the battery pack, and because this is a 2.5-year-old vehicle, still plenty of warranty on these, and a cracking buy second hand. I really do think the original 28 and 38 kilowatt hour Ioniqs are the best electric vehicles you can get. You get the most amount of equipment, very reliable car, fantastic range for the size of the battery because of the efficiency these vehicles achieve. So now let's look at the Tesla. So obviously these cars are both worth about the same, but the main difference is this one is young and still under warranty. This one is old, out of warranty, and higher mileage. That's why these are the same value as those. So these Tesla Model S's came out in 2012 in America. We didn't get them until 2014, and this is a 2014 one, so as old as these get in the UK. And you get an 8-year powertrain warranty on these, so that's 8 years on the electric motors, the high voltage component, and the battery pack. So the warranty on this car expired about 6-7 months ago or so. However, on this vehicle, before the warranty expired, fortunately I had a new traction battery fitted. Well, not brand new, it was a remanufactured pack, so a reconditioned pack, and it also had a new drive motor at the back as well. So virtually a complete new powertrain under warranty, fortunately just before it expired. So if you're looking to buy a Model S, they're the cars you need to look out for, the ones that have had components changed under warranty. The 85 kilowatt hour cars are generally getting their battery packs changed at about 7 or 8 years old. That's not because the cells are damaged and their batteries are degrading. That's not the case at all. It's purely because of a design fault in the original packs, that water leaks in them and they suffer damage internally. This has got a revision D pack, which I was told by the Tesla technician that it's impossible to suffer the same damage because that problem has been designed out. But certainly on these older generation cars, they are seeing this battery failure where you get this water damage on sort of 2014 and 2015 cars. Most of them are getting picked up within warranty, but some of them now aren't failing until after warranty. So if you're looking at one of these used, you certainly want to look out for a car that's had a battery replacement under warranty, and also ideally that drive motor as well, because then you're getting virtually a whole new powertrain and you're not paying any more for those. I'm seeing them on Auto Trader You have to look in the text, but vehicles that have had this work aren't sort of fetching any more money than ones that haven't, but obviously they make a far better buy. So this is a 2014, as I said, and this is really generation 1 in terms of Tesla. It doesn't have a camera up here in the screen, and it doesn't have a radar down here at the front. So it does have cruise control, manual cruise control, so no adaptive cruise control, no autopilot, and no safety aids. And because of that, that's why I really like this car. It's sort of old school, a proper driver's car. Okay, it doesn't have autopilot, but I've driven many Teslas that do, and to be honest, I don't really use it. I don't miss it, don't really have a need for it, to be honest. When they have full self-driving, then yeah, great, I'm all in. But autopilot as it is now in the UK is not something that I particularly desire. But apart from that, this car has got everything that any other Tesla would have. And that's the nice thing about Teslas, because you get over-the-air updates. This car looks exactly the same as a new Model S. Obviously, you've got a portrait screen in these, and the new models that we're going to be getting later in the year in the UK have now landscape screens like the Model 3 and Model Y. But because this has got software, getting software updates all the time, this is all being refreshed and looks completely different to what it was when it's new. And that's the real advantage of a Tesla, is you get over-the-air updates. They're all free as well, and you're getting new functions, new features, and the car's always sort of improving and getting better. And I think people don't realise the power of a software-driven car. Tesla do everything completely different, and to have a car that updates itself without going into the garage and gets new features and also gets all this data and streaming and Netflix and YouTube and Spotify, in this case on these older ones, without paying any money for it either. They're just great, and the way it all integrates with the charger network, these are just completely different to any other EV. So while these older ones, particularly these first generation early 2014 ones, they don't have autopilot or autonomous braking, but because of the over-the-air updates, they have absolutely everything else that a new one would have. So on this car, I have paid to have the computer upgraded here, the screen here. This is called the MCU, and on the original cars as this had the MCU 1, the original version of the computer, and this was all getting a little bit slow, and I was having a few glitches with the sat-nav. Basically the memory has issues as they get older because of the amount of read and writes and things on it, and you have to have the memory changed. Anyway, what I did is had the whole MCU upgraded to the MCU 2, where you get a new screen and the computer behind it. And on these earlier cars, they also changed that screen up there as well, for no extra cost. So it's had 2 new screens, and this is all now much more snappy. Being the older cars as well, you get all the data for free. You don't pay a monthly subscription to have the extended data, so you get live traffic. You also have your Spotify and tune-in radio and all that sort of thing. And when you have that MCU 2 upgrade, you then have a theatre mode where you've got Netflix and YouTube, which is great when you're charging or when you're sort of waiting for your kids and sitting in the car. You can watch YouTube. You've also got the arcade and the games and the toy box and all the other stuff as well. But again, being a software-driven car, there's so much that's done on this screen, and to have the later computer installed, again, this is just like a brand new one. So even though this car is getting older, it evolves and just doesn't feel dated at all. One little thing I like about the Tesla is just the attention to detail in the software. So whenever they show a vehicle, like up here on the screen there in the instrument cluster, they show your car. So they know the colour of the car. In my case, it's metallic green, so the paintwork is metallic green. They know what wheels you've got. In my case, the original 19-inch wheels. Mine have been painted grey since, but of course they don't know that, so it's still silver. But there on the tyre pressure monitoring, they've got my car. If you go to any settings here, they show your own car. And even if you play one of the computer games, the sort of kart racing game, if you select Tesla, again, you get your own car with your own colour and the right wheels. It's just those little attention to details which just makes a Tesla feel very nice. Another thing I like is having Spotify. I just really like having Spotify streamed to the car. I know modern cars can have this, but on the Teslas, this is all free. These early cars have unlimited data for no cost. On the newer cars, you do have to pay for that. So I get traffic, satellite view in the navigation if you want it, unlimited Spotify, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, Netflix, all streamed over the cellular network. And you've got to think back 8.5, 9 years ago, vehicles didn't have this sort of technology, but Teslas do. And they stream new updates. So when we jump back to theatre mode here, things like Disney Plus, which was something that came with a recent update, as did all of these. Back then, 8.5 years ago, none of this was available on the Teslas, but as I said, these over-the-air updates introduce these new features for no cost either. So now let's talk about range, because even though the battery in this car is pretty much twice the size of the Ioniq there, it does exactly the same range. And that's mainly because this isn't as efficient, and it's also a big and heavy car, and it's also much more powerful. So at the moment, the battery is at 44%. So if I change this to distance, at the rated distance, that would give a range of 123 miles. If I change it to typical, that would give a range of about 98 miles at that percentage. But what I find is this does around about a 200 mile range. In the winter, if you're driving hard and fast, as it's very difficult not to in one of these, then maybe 180 at worst, but typically around about 200 miles. In the winter, in the summer, if you're driving efficiently, you can get about 240 miles out of these. But whereas the Ioniq is a very efficient car, this is at the other end of the scale, really. This is big, heavy, fast and inefficient. The newer models are much more efficient. The dual motor ones are more efficient, and the newer Model SX, Model 3, Model Ys, they're all much more efficient than these early generation ones. But it doesn't really matter. The range, 200 mile range, when you're charging overnight at home, again on cheap rate electricity, that's more than enough range for all our typical daily driving. But one thing that makes this car a very nice long distance driving car is the Tesla Supercharging network. And I do use that Supercharging network. So on this car, it has unlimited supercharging, free of charge. So I can rock up to a Tesla Supercharger, just plug in and the car charges, and you don't pay anything for it. So these earlier Tesla Model S and Model X vehicles had free supercharging for the lifetime of the car. So that's another benefit of having one of these early generation Teslas. So charge ports at the back on Teslas is exactly the same as the Ioniq actually. Being an older Model S, this has the proprietary Type 2 style connector, which is unique to Tesla. This does AC and DC charging through the same port. I've also had the CCS upgrade done, so I can adapt this to a CCS, so I can use CCS chargers as well. And at the front here, in the huge storage area you've got here, I've also got a CHAdeMO adapter as well. So that's what makes these early Model S's the most flexible cars when it comes to charging, because I can charge on a Tesla supercharger, whether it's the early generation with the proprietary Type 2 connector, or the new version 3 superchargers where it's CCS only. And using this adapter, I can also charge on CHAdeMO as well. So the charging speeds on these earlier Model S's isn't great compared to modern EVs, but you've got to remember this is an old car. So I think when these were new, they were doing 120 kilowatt charging, which you've got to think back to 2014. No one else was doing any charging speeds higher than 50 kilowatt. You've got to think back at the back then. What did we have? We had the Leaf, the Zoe and the iMeave. So the fastest charging speed you could get on any other electric car then was 50 kilowatt. These were doing 120. However, since then, Tesla, with an over-the-air update, have reduced the charging speeds a bit just to prolong the battery life. So the most I see on this is about 80 kilowatt in reality. I think it does a little bit more occasionally if your battery is very low. But anyway, these do preheating, so if you select a supercharger location and actually it's got InstaVolt and other chargers as well on the navigation here, but when you select a rapid charger, it starts warming the battery as you drive to the charger, so you get the best charging speed possible. But yeah, in real life this is doing 80 kilowatt peak on average. Depends how flat you are, but most of the time it's more like 45 to 60 kilowatt. But that's exactly the speed that does anyway. But this has free supercharging, as I said, so I don't mind that a charge is going to take me typically 45 minutes. If I'm very low and I want to charge to a high state of charge, it can be up to an hour. But there's not very often I would do that. Most of the time it's sort of half an hour, 40-minute charge. I think the Model S is still a really nice looking EV. The styling hasn't dated at all. I think they're much nicer than the 3 and the Y. Even these early generations with the nose cone, the black koala nose cone at the front, still look good. Obviously I've done a few little upgrades on this. Carbon fibre spoiler on the back. Painted the wheels grey, which I think matches the metallic green very well. Red calipers as well. But yeah, I think even though this is a 8.5-year-old car coming up to 9 years old, still a good looking EV. So I think these are the two best used electric cars for a £20,000 budget. Very different propositions. Obviously this is a much newer car and still under warranty and very low mileage, whereas this is an older car. This particular one's done high mileage. To get one down to £20,000 it will need to be a high mileage Model S. This has done 118,000 miles, but if you can find one that's had a replacement pack and motor, then an absolutely cracking buy. And both have got an awful lot of equipment. Both feel like they're very high spec cars. Both are very nice to drive, and I really don't think you can beat them for £20,000. But anyway, let me know what you think. Add your comments below. If you've found this video useful, please do hit the thumbs up, and I'll see you on the next video. So one final point is, what would be our next EVs? What would we get if we wanted to change the Ioniq or the Tesla Model S here? And I think this also relates to why I think these are the best EVs for the money, because if I wanted to change that, then I'd be looking at another Model S, but I cannot see a reason for spending any more money on a newer Model S when it does exactly the same what this does. All it would give me would be AutoPilot because of those software updates, and these older generation ones have the advantage of the free supercharging, free data as well, so I'm not going to be changing that anytime soon. The only thing I would want from a newer Model S or a different Model S would be the upgraded sound system with the subwoofer. I would like that, but apart from that, I like this car and I'm not going to change it. I think we'll keep this forever, and I particularly like the colour, which isn't available with the newer ones. When it comes to the Ioniq, again, not much else is out there which is better without spending an awful lot of money, but the only thing which is getting close is a Tesla Model 3. So I have no desire to drive a Model 3 over a Model S. I think the Model S is a much nicer car, but Mel would like a Model 3, and while they're not down to the price of one of these, they are getting close. You can now buy a Model 3 for £25,000 in the UK. So maybe in another year's time or so we might change that for a high mileage Model 3. But for now, I think these are the two best cars you can get for £20,000.